The dust swirled across the barren plains of Colorado Territory as Zara Holloway clutched her tattered shawl closer, the last remnants of the wagon train disappearing over the distant ridge. It was 1867, and the promise of a new life in California had vanished with the caravan that had abandoned her after the fever took her parents. Now, at 18, she was alone in the vast wilderness with nothing but her father's pocket watch, her mother's silver hairbrush, and the clothes on her back. The sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson. Zara's stomach growled in protest as she searched for shelter. Her gaze settled on the broken-down wagon half buried in the dry earth, its canvas torn and wooden wheels splintered. It wasn't much, but it would have to do for the night. She crawled beneath the dilapidated structure, arranging her shawl as a makeshift pillow. Tears stung her eyes as exhaustion overcame her. In mere days, she had lost everything: her family, her possessions, and her future. Sleep came in fitful bursts, her dreams filled with the faces of those who had left her behind, claiming her illness might be contagious, though she knew it was only exhaustion and grief. Unbeknownst to Zara, a lone figure watched from the shadows of a nearby copse of juniper trees. Jesse Walsh had been tracking the wagon train for 2 days, hoping to catch up and join their journey west. The seasoned cowboy had spent the last 5 years driving cattle across the frontier, but the loneliness of the trail had begun to wear on him. At 26, he yearned for something more than endless horizons and the company of rough men. When he spotted the solitary form crawling beneath the abandoned wagon, curiosity got the better of him. From his vantage point, Jesse observed the young woman settle in for the night. Even in the fading light, he could make out the delicate curve of her cheek and the gentle way she tucked her hand beneath her face as she drifted to sleep. He should have continued on his way. Frontier etiquette demanded it, but something about her vulnerability in this harsh landscape compelled him to stay. Setting up his own modest camp out of sight, Jesse laid back against his saddle and gazed at the stars. His thoughts returned to the sleeping woman, and he found himself wondering about the ghost of a smile he'd glimpsed as she'd fallen asleep. What dreams could bring such peace to someone clearly in dire circumstances? Jesse's own dreams that night were unusually vivid. In them, the mysterious woman smiled at him with such warmth that it seemed to chase away the frontier's chill. He woke before dawn, feeling oddly protective of a stranger whose voice he hadn't even heard. Zara stirred as the first light of day crept across the plains. Her body ached from the hard ground and her throat burned with thirst. She crawled from beneath the wagon, startled to discover a small bundle placed near the opening. Cautiously, she unwrapped the cloth to find a piece of jerky, a biscuit, and a small canteen of water. "I mean you no harm, miss," came a deep voice from behind her. Zara whirled around, her heart hammering in her chest. Standing several paces away was a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and kind eyes the color of a summer sky. His worn leather vest and dusty Stetson marked him as a cowboy. "Who are you?" she demanded, backing toward the wagon. "Jesse Walsh, madam. I was trailing the wagon train you were with." He kept his distance, hands open at his sides to show he was unarmed. "Saw them leave you behind yesterday. Didn't seem right." Zara's shoulders slumped slightly, but wariness remained in her posture. "They feared I carried the same sickness that took my parents," her voice cracked. "I told them I was fine, just tired and grieving, but they wouldn't listen." Jesse's jaw tightened at the cruelty of her abandonment. "Well, you don't look sick to me, just hungry and worn out." He nodded toward the bundle. "It's not much, but it should help." Hesitantly, Zara reached for the canteen and took a sip of the cool water. "Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I'm Zara Holloway. Just Jesse, please." He smiled, and something in Zara's chest fluttered unexpectedly. "If you don't mind my asking, what are your plans now, Miss Holloway?" Zara glanced at the desolate landscape surrounding them. "I honestly don't know. I have nowhere to go and no means to get there." Jesse considered this for a moment. "There's a settlement about 2 days' ride from here, Fort Collins. I'm heading that way myself. You're welcome to ride with me if you'd like." Suspicion clouded her features. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because out here, showing kindness is sometimes the difference between life and death," Jesse replied simply. Besides, my mother would haunt me from her grave if I left a lady alone in the wilderness. A small smile tugged at Zara's lips, the same one that had haunted Jesse's dreams. I suppose I don't have much choice. Within the hour they were on their way, Zara perched somewhat uncomfortably behind Jesse on his sturdy chestnut gelding, Rusty. She held tentatively to his waist, trying to maintain a proper distance despite the horse's rocking gait. You can hold tighter, Jesse assured her as they navigated a rocky incline. I promise my intentions are honorable. Reluctantly, Zara tightened her grip, acutely aware of the solid warmth of him beneath her hands. It had been so long since she'd had human contact that even this simple touch was overwhelming. As they rode, Jesse pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his years on the frontier. He'd come west from Pennsylvania after the war, seeking adventure and open spaces after the claustrophobic horror of battle. What about you? He asked over his shoulder. What brought your family west? Zara's voice was wistful as she replied, My father was a schoolteacher in Boston. He had dreams of starting a school in California where children of all backgrounds could learn together. She paused, the memory bittersweet. My mother supported his vision, though I think she would have been content anywhere as long as we were together. They sound like good people, Jesse said softly. They were, Zara agreed, fighting back tears. I miss them terribly. They rode in companionable silence until midday when Jesse suggested they stop to rest the horse and eat. He helped Zara dismount, his hands lingering at her waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. She pretended not to notice the way her skin tingled beneath his touch. As they shared a modest meal of jerky and hardtack beneath the sparse shade of a cottonwood tree, Jesse studied his companion. Despite the dust of travel and the sorrow in her eyes, Zara was undeniably beautiful. Her chestnut hair, though tangled, caught the sunlight in rich waves, and her eyes were the deep green of pine forests. There was a quiet strength about her that drew him in, a resilience that had kept her going despite devastating loss. Tell me about this settlement, Zara said, breaking into his thoughts. Fort Collins, what is it like? Jesse leaned back against the tree trunk. It's growing. Started as a military camp during the Indian Troubles, but becoming more of a proper town now. There's a hotel, a general store, even a small school. He paused, thinking, given your father's profession, you might find work there as a teacher. Hope flickered across Zara's face. Do you really think so? I assisted my father with his students back in Boston. I don't see why not. The children out here deserve education as much as anywhere else. Jesse smiled, once again captivated by the way her entire countenance transformed when she wasn't consumed by grief. They continued their journey as afternoon shadows lengthened across the prairie. When they made camp that evening by a small creek, Jesse insisted Zara take his bedroll while he kept watch. I won't be able to sleep anyway, he assured her when she protested. Too many years of sleeping with one eye open on cattle drives. Zara wrapped herself in the woolen blanket, inhaling the scent of leather and pine that seemed to cling to everything Jesse owned. As exhaustion pulled her towards sleep, she found herself watching him through half-closed eyes as he tended the small fire. There was a gentle competence to his movements, a quiet confidence that made her feel safe for the first time since losing her parents. Jesse glanced over, catching her gaze. Get some rest, Zara. Tomorrow will be another long day. The sound of her name on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her. Thank you, Jesse, for everything, he nodded, a soft smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Sweet dreams, and they were sweet indeed. Like Jesse the night before, Zara dreamed of companionship and connection, of a life beyond grief and loneliness. When she woke at dawn, she found Jesse already awake, brewing coffee over the rekindled fire. Did you sleep at all? She asked, joining him by the fire. He handed her a tin cup of the strong, black liquid. Enough. I'm used to making do with little rest. The second day of travel proved more challenging than the first. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and by midday, a steady rain began to fall. Jesse pulled his oilskin slicker from his saddlebag and wrapped it around Zara's shoulders despite her objections. You need it more than I do, he insisted. I've weathered worse than this. The rain turned the trail muddy and treacherous. When Rusty stumbled on the slick ground, nearly sending both riders tumbling, Jesse decided they needed to seek shelter until the storm passed. They found it in the form of an abandoned line shack, likely used by cowboys during roundup season. The one-room structure was sparsely furnished with a rough-hewn table, a cast-iron stove, and a narrow cot. "It's not much, but it'll keep us dry," Jesse said as he unsaddled Rusty and secured him beneath the lean-to attached to the shack. Inside, Zara stood dripping on the dirt floor, suddenly acutely aware of their isolation and proximity. Jesse seemed to sense her discomfort. "I'll gather some wood for the stove," he said, heading back out into the rain. "See if you can find anything useful in here." When he returned with an armful of relatively dry wood from beneath the lean-to, Zara had discovered a cache of canned beans and a few candles in a cupboard. "Looks like we won't go hungry tonight," she said with a tentative smile. Jesse soon had a fire crackling in the stove, filling the small space with blessed warmth. They hung their wet outer clothing on chairs pulled close to the heat, careful to maintain propriety despite their circumstances. As they shared a simple meal of heated beans, the storm intensified, rattling the windows and roof of the humble shelter. Zara jumped at a particularly loud crack of thunder. "Storm reminds me of the shelling at Gettysburg," Jesse said quietly, his eyes distant. "Never thought I'd make it out of that alive." Zara's gaze softened. "You fought in the war," he nodded. "Union Army. Enlisted at 17, lying about my age. Spent 3 years watching friends die for a cause that seemed righteous at the start but became muddied in blood and politics by the end." "Is that why you came west? To escape those memories?" Jesse's lips curved in a sad smile. "Partly. Also because everything back home felt too small after what I'd seen, needed the big sky and endless horizon to remind me there was still beauty in the world." Zara reached across the table impulsively, placing her hand over his. "And has it reminded you?" His eyes met hers, and for a moment neither breathed. "It has," he said softly, "more so in the last 2 days than in the 5 years prior." The air between them crackled with unspoken feelings, but Jesse gently withdrew his hand and stood. "You should take the cot. I'll make do on the floor." "That hardly seems fair," Zara protested. "You've already given up your bedroll once." "Miss Holloway," he said with exaggerated formality, "my mother raised me to be a gentleman, and a gentleman I shall remain, regardless of circumstances." His playful tone drew a genuine laugh from Zara, the sound like music in the rustic shelter. "Very well, Mr. Walsh. But I insist you at least take your blanket back." They settled in for the night, the storm providing a wild lullaby. Despite her exhaustion, Zara found sleep elusive. She was acutely aware of Jesse lying just a few feet away, his breathing deep and even. "Jesse," she whispered into the darkness. "Are you awake?" "Yes," came his immediate reply. Zara hesitated, then asked the question that had been troubling her. "What happens when we reach Fort Collins? Will you simply leave me there and continue on your way?" There was a long pause before Jesse answered. "I hadn't thought that far ahead. But no, I wouldn't just leave you without making sure you were settled." Relief washed over her, followed swiftly by confusion about why his answer mattered so much. "Where will you go after?" Another pause. "Truthfully, I'm not certain anymore. I was heading to California, thinking maybe I'd find work on one of the big ranches there. But lately, I've been wondering if it's time to put down roots somewhere." The conversation drifted into comfortable silence, and eventually, Zara fell asleep to the sound of rain on the roof and Jesse's steady breathing. Morning brought clear skies and a renewed sense of purpose. They set out early, both aware that something had shifted between them during the night's conversation. Jesse was more attentive, finding excuses to help Zara over difficult terrain, his hand lingering in hers a bit longer each time. By late afternoon, the settlement of Fort Collins came into view. The collection of wooden buildings and tents represented both an end and a beginning for Zara. As they rode down the muddy main street, she felt a curious mixture of hope and regret. Jesse led them to the small hotel, a 2-story structure with a freshly painted sign. "Wait here," he told Zara as he dismounted. "Let me make sure they have a room available for you." He returned moments later with good news. They have a room and I've paid for 3 nights. That should give you time to get your bearings and perhaps inquire about teaching positions." Zara slid from the horse, her legs unsteady after 2 days of riding. "That's incredibly generous, Jesse. I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks necessary," he replied, helping her with her meager belongings. "It's what anyone would do." "No," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. "It's not what anyone would do. The others left me to die. You saved me." His cheeks colored slightly at her words. "Well, I'm glad our paths crossed then." After getting Zara settled in her room, Jesse excused himself to see to Rusty and find his own accommodations. He promised to check on her in the morning and perhaps show her around the growing settlement. Left alone, Zara sat on the edge of the narrow bed, emotions warring within her. In just 2 days, Jesse Walsh had become important to her in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. The thought of him riding away made her chest ache with a hollow pain distinct from her grief over her parents. The next morning, true to his word, Jesse appeared at the hotel. He'd cleaned up, his dark hair still damp from washing, and had traded his travel-worn clothes for a fresh shirt and less dusty trousers. "You look different," Zara observed as they walked side by side down the boardwalk. Jesse ran a self-conscious hand through his hair. "Figured I should make myself presentable if I'm to be seen with a lady like yourself." The compliment brought a blush to Zara's cheeks. "And what are your plans now? Will you continue to California soon?" He shrugged, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. "I'm in no hurry. Thought I might stay in Fort Collins a while, see what opportunities arise." Hope fluttered in Zara's heart at his words. "I would like that," she admitted softly. Their tour of the settlement led them to the small schoolhouse on the edge of town. Classes were in session, and through the window, they could see a harried-looking older woman attempting to teach children of various ages. "Looks like they could use another teacher," Jesse observed with a smile. With gentle encouragement from Jesse, Zara found the courage to introduce herself to the teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, after classes concluded for the day. The older woman's relief was palpable when Zara mentioned her experience assisting her father. "Heaven has answered my prayers, Mrs. Abernathy declared. "I've been trying to run this school alone since Mr. Peterson took ill last winter. Could you possibly start tomorrow? The pay is modest, but there's a small room attached to the schoolhouse where you could stay." Stunned by the swift turn of events, Zara looked to Jesse, who nodded encouragingly. "I would be honored," she told Mrs. Abernathy. As they walked back toward the hotel, excitement bubbled through Zara. "I can hardly believe it. My father would be so pleased to know I'm continuing his work." Jesse's smile was genuine, though there was a touch of something like regret in his eyes. "You'll make a wonderful teacher." That evening, they celebrated Zara's good fortune with dinner at the hotel's modest dining room. Over simple fare of roast beef and potatoes, they shared stories of their childhoods and dreams for the future. With each passing moment, the connection between them deepened, transcending their brief acquaintance. When Jesse walked Zara to her room afterward, an awkward silence fell between them. They stood outside her door, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "Thank you for believing in me," Zara said at last, "for seeing possibilities when all I could see was loss." Jesse took her hand, his thumb brushing gently across her knuckles. "You're remarkable, Zara Holloway. Your parents would be proud of the woman you've become." Impulsively, Zara rose on her tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "Good night, Jesse." She slipped into her room before he could respond, her heart racing at her own boldness. The following day, Zara began her new position at the school. The children were welcoming if somewhat unruly, and by day's end, she was exhausted but fulfilled. She was surprised to find Jesse waiting outside when the last student departed. "Thought you might appreciate some company on your walk home," he said, falling into step beside her. "Home," Zara repeated thoughtfully. "It's strange to think of that little room as home, but I suppose it is now." Jesse's expression turned serious. "I need to tell you something, Zara. I've taken a job with the Henderson Ranch outside of town. It's good work, breaking horses and helping with the cattle. I won't be leaving for California." Joy surged through her at his words. "You're staying in Fort Collins," he nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Turns out there's a powerful reason to put down roots here after all." Over the weeks that followed, Jesse became a constant in Zara's new life. He would appear after school with small gifts, a wildflower, a book of poetry he'd found at the general store, a length of pretty ribbon for her hair. On Sundays, they would picnic by the river, talking for hours about everything and nothing. As autumn painted the surrounding landscape in gold and crimson, their friendship deepened into something more profound. Jesse was careful, always respectful, but Zara could feel his restraint whenever their hands touched or their eyes met for too long. It was on one such Sunday, as they sat beneath a cottonwood tree watching leaves drift into the river, that Jesse finally gathered his courage. "Zara," he began, his voice unusually hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about the night we met, about how I watched you sleep beneath that wagon and dreamed of your smile." She turned to him, eyes wide with surprise. "You dreamed of me, even then," he nodded, taking her hand in his. "Even then. There was something about you, your courage, your determination that captured me from the first moment. And every day since has only confirmed what my heart knew instantly." "And what did your heart know?" Zara whispered, hardly daring to hope. Jesse's eyes, blue as the Colorado sky, held hers with unwavering certainty. "That you are the woman I've been searching for without even knowing it. That with you, I've found the home I've been seeking since the war ended." Tears welled in Zara's eyes as joy bloomed within her. "I thought I had lost everything when my parents died and the wagon train left me behind, but now I see that fate was leading me to you." "Zara Holloway," Jesse said, his voice thick with emotion, "I love you. I know it's soon, perhaps too soon by proper standards, but out here, life moves at its own pace. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Without hesitation, Zara threw her arms around his neck. "Yes," she breathed against his lips. "Yes, I will marry you, Jesse Walsh." Their first kiss was gentle, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears of happiness. They were married a month later in the small church that had recently been completed in Fort Collins. Mrs. Abernathy arranged for the school to be closed for the day so all the children could attend, and Mr. Henderson, impressed with Jesse's work, gifted the couple a plot of land not far from town. "A man needs his own place," the rancher said gruffly, "somewhere to raise a family." By the following spring, Jesse had built them a small but sturdy cabin on their land. Zara continued teaching, while Jesse divided his time between working for Henderson and developing their own modest ranch. They started with just a few head of cattle and 2 horses, but Jesse's skill and determination promised growth. Their evenings were spent planning their future, talking late into the night before falling asleep in each other's arms. The loneliness that had marked both their lives before seemed like a distant memory. On their first anniversary, Jesse surprised Zara with a proper bed frame to replace the simple mattress they'd been using. He'd crafted it himself from oak, carving delicate wildflowers along the headboard. "It's beautiful," she gasped, running her fingers over the intricate workmanship. "Not as beautiful as you," he replied, drawing her into his embrace. "Have I told you today how happy you make me?" Zara smiled up at him, the same smile that had haunted his dreams that first night. "You might have mentioned it, but I never tire of hearing it." As they stood together in the home they had built, surrounded by the life they had created from the ashes of loss and loneliness, both recognized the miraculous journey that had brought them together. From a chance encounter in the wilderness, a desperate young woman sleeping beneath an abandoned wagon and a compassionate cowboy who couldn't look away, had grown a love strong enough to weather any storm the frontier might bring. 5 years later, their modest ranch had prospered into a respected operation. Zara still taught 3 days a week at the growing school, bringing their 3-year-old daughter, Hope, with her. Their son, Daniel, was just learning to walk, toddling after his father as Jesse went about his daily chores. Sometimes, on clear nights, they would sit on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching the stars emerge while their children slept inside. Jesse would pull Zara close, remembering the night he'd first seen her. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if I hadn't spotted you that day?" he would ask. And Zara would smile, that smile, the one that still made his heart race after all these years, and reply, No, because even then, lost and alone, I somehow knew someone was watching over me. My heart was waiting for you before I even knew you existed. In the vastness of the western frontier, where countless souls wandered in search of purpose and belonging, they had found in each other the greatest treasure of all, a love born of compassion and nurtured through adversity. A love that transformed two solitary journeys into one shared adventure that would endure for a lifetime.